Hey guys, what's going on? Of course, catchphrase for the channel. Thanks G2A sponsoring the channel. Reference link in the description below. And also, this is my wildrift tier list video. I haven't done one of these in a while. I haven't done a huge amount of content recently. You may remember when I was doing the esports stuff, my voice was dying. I had really bad laryngitis, and it just essentially knocked me out of commission. We actually went to Italy to see my parents this last weekend, and my throat was pretty much a goner. I had to go to an Italian pharmacy, and I don't know any Italian apart from the basics. And I went to the pharmacist, and I was like, and then he gave me this, and that's what I got, and it actually worked. It's been great. Anyway, we're going to be doing a tier list today, and I kind of wanted to give a shout out to WildStats as well. WildStats they sponsor my tier list videos specifically, but also they are a really great source of information for me when building these tier lists out. And specifically, I kind of wanted to take a look at where Pyke and Nautilus sit, because they are, of course, the two newest champions, mostly played in the support role. They've actually got very high pick rates, you know, as you'd expect, the new champions. They're also really fun to play. Their win rates are really bad. I mean, Yumi's win rate is really bad, but she is probably converted by, probably, I guess, recognized by most supports players as one of the most overpowered and ridiculous supports. So I wouldn't really take these win rates to heart, especially because we're looking at Diamond. If you look at Master Plus, you'll find that Yumi's win rate is a little bit better. Nautilus's and Pyke's aren't, though. I mean, to be honest, right now, I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between Master and Diamond. I think that because of the way that ranks are working right now, you're getting a huge blur between Master and Diamond in terms of relative skill. But nonetheless, I think a lot of top tier supports really think that, you know, that Yumi is one of the best supports in the game. So the win rates here don't always reflect how strong that champion is. You know, when I put my tier list together, I don't just look at the win rate. I look at the pick rate. You know, I balance that with opinions of pros. So the data that I get from WildStats helps inform my opinion, but it doesn't 100% like, you know, decide my opinion. You know, if we went to like 7 days, you'd expect to see like Nautilus's win rate goes up massively over the course of 7 days because people have had more time to play him. Pyke's pick rate goes up to like the most, but his win rate is still really bad. What's the last 1 day? I see their win rates are getting better. So that's what you'd expect, right? Over the course of a champion being released, especially new ones that require a lot of playtime, like Pyke and Nautilus, their win rates are going to slowly increase the more and more people get used to them. So that's, you know, that's something to pay attention to. The win rates for Pyke and Nautilus will probably be reflective of their skill in maybe a month's time, something like that. But hey, look, WildStats, link in the description below. Go and check it out. Let's get into the tier list. So let's kick things off with the Baron lane. Very interesting lane to talk about because there's quite a lot going on. I'm actually going to move someone up just based on my own experience and from what we've seen in pro play a little bit. But Baron lane is an interesting one because not a huge amount has changed in Baron lane. Like, it's one of the few lanes that actually hasn't had a huge shift in terms of what's being played. If you look at pro play, you know, people are just basically spamming things like Darius, Renekton, Set, still a little bit, Jace, Garen, those kind of picks. Like, those are the picks that kind of dominate Baron lane in general. But I think in terms of Baron lane, the only major changes that I've done is obviously I've moved Jace up a little bit. I think Jace is actually really strong. I've played him a lot in solo queue with Hullbreaker, Jace first, like really strong side lane presence. Singed, I've moved up a little bit because the overall kind of like Singed play rate has gone up quite a lot recently, so therefore I think Singed is kind of like he's okay. I think there was a thought of maybe trying Nautilus Baron lane, but I just think not quite yet. Like, I think we need to kind of let Nautilus settle down a little before we just shove him in the Baron lane. But I think there was the thought that maybe Nautilus could be a viable Baron laner. Pyke is being played pretty much anywhere, by the way. He's being played jungle, he's being played like Baron lane, mid lane. I think Pyke's relatively decent, but you have to play a very roam heavy style, and in Baron lane that's not great. But Pyke himself, I think Pyke is a strong champion in Wild Rift right now. Does a lot of damage, really insane engage potential. I think Pyke is a really strong champion, but probably better played in support or in mid, just because that kind of, or even jungle. I've seen people play a lot of Pyke jungle. That just better supports the roam heavy play style that sort of suits Pyke better. But in general, I think like Darius, Renekton, and Set, these are great blind picks. The reason that I don't think there is, like, by the way, just so you know, I don't think there are any Baron laners that I would suddenly say are overpowered, right? So I don't think there are any Baron laners that I'm looking at here and saying, that is a pick every single game champion. When I sort Baron laners into S+, I'm actually thinking about Baron laners that I would pick in any situation because they are just good blind picks. Like if I have to pick my Baron lane first, if I pick one of these three, I know that I'm going to end up in not a really terrible matchup. You know, Garen is probably one of the harder matchups, right, for a lot of these champions. So I think like this is why I put these guys in S+, is because they're just really good all-round picks that don't have many really strong counters. And then in S, you've got really strong picks that do sometimes have counters and can sometimes struggle when in bad matchups. So, but these champions, in terms of relative power, are all quite similar. It just really comes down to matchups for kind of like separating them out between S+ and S, in my opinion, anyway. A tier has got like champions that are good, but have a lot of really awkward matchups. Or otherwise aren't super strong. I don't really think Sin just is as strong as like a lot of these champions. I know that Shen is being played a lot more in pro play right now. But yeah, overall, this is where I think that the Baron lane sits. And I think, again, kind of dominated by these three guys, but mostly because those three guys can be played pretty much in any team comp, in any game, and you're still going to get value out of them as picks. In terms of jungle, I think... By the way, I always get influenced by Vex's tier list for the jungle, which I'll link his Twitch channel in the description. He sometimes streams. I think the jungle, like the same guys have populated the top tier. Kha'Zix and Lee Sin still super strong. I think Olaf is still really, really good. I think that Xin Zhao is really good, and I also think Echo is a really strong jungler. Echo got a really big buff on the last patch, and it made him really strong in terms of his scaling options and kind of how much damage he can output and how strong he is as a jungler overall. I think Evelynn is... Look, I still believe Evelynn is one of the best junglers to play in the entire game if you're in solo queue. Once you get 3 to 4 items on Evelynn, you can basically one-shot anybody that you want on the enemy team as long as you flank correctly and use your protobelt correctly. And I think that makes her so insanely strong in solo queue. You can basically just perma-farm with Evelynn. She's still got a super quick clear. You can ignore your team if you want to and just farm and become the win condition. I really like Evelynn as a jungler, and if I play jungle, I generally default to Evelynn. But I do understand that she has got weaknesses. I do understand that control wards, you know, can be a problem for her. I will say that I don't think control wards are as big of a problem as some people make out that Evelynn, you know, has to deal with. But I think that I do understand that she does have weaknesses. So I'm not saying that she is completely insane. That's why I haven't put her in S+, because there are clear weaknesses for Evelynn. Morgana, really good AP jungler, has one of the quickest clear speeds in the entire game. Obviously, really strong in ganks if she can land her binding. The only problem with the Morgana is a little bit further down the line, she can sometimes struggle in terms of having teamfight impact. Pyke and Nautilus, I've put them both in. I actually think Nautilus is a massively underrated jungler right now. He does clear the jungle pretty quickly with his Titan's Wrath, which I think is like his second ability or whatever it is, his shield. I don't know if you've ever tried when you're playing Nautilus in other roles and just going to the jungle and trying to clear it, but he actually does clear the jungle pretty quickly. And so I think like Nautilus may be a little bit underrated in terms of jungle. I also think Pyke is getting played in jungle a little bit. I don't know if he's as good as A tier, but I know that some people do rate him just because of how strong Pyke is as a champion right now. So that's why Pyke is kind of sitting there in around this level. Lots of kind of like, I mean, Jace can still be played jungle, but the problem is like there are so many things that can be played jungle right now. Like the stuff in B tier and some of the stuff in A tier is almost never going to get picked because you've got so many strong junglers to choose from in S+ and S tier that you almost never need to go down to like the A tier level of jungle. Like even in S+, you've got 5 different junglers. Like they've almost always one or two of these is going to be available in a game, right? And you know, I think Olaf is another one of those junglers that can just absolutely single-handedly carry a game. So you've got so much to choose from in terms of the strong junglers that there's almost no point going to these kind of more niche junglers that you can see down here. Now coming on to mid lane, this is an interesting one because mid lane is, again, another lane that hasn't had a huge amount of change. Now, one of the things I'm going to hold my hands up and say is that I massively underestimated the Veigar buff. One person that didn't massively underestimate the Veigar buff is Hell's Devil. And I remember specifically talking with Hell saying, look, I think Veigar's still going to take too long to come online. And no, actually, Veigar's kind of nutty. If you want free wins in mid lane, Veigar is a really good pick. It's not that Veigar is suddenly an insane early game champion. It's not even that Veigar needs to scale. It's that the stun on his baby cage, third ability, is so obnoxiously long that it just controls team fights way too easily. Yeah, he stacks a little bit quicker with his Q. That's actually irrelevant. That means a small amount in the grand scheme of things. It's actually just how long his baby cage now stuns for. And when you max it second, or even in some cases max it first, that becomes dumb at like second dragon fight. And yeah, it's very difficult to play around Veigar. He probably needs a cooldown increase on that baby cage because at the moment it's way too short for kind of the amount of control it provides. So Veigar's like really, really, really insanely strong, in my opinion. Echo's also really good. I still rate Irelia mid if you can play Irelia. She's like very user dependent though, if I'm honest with you. Other than that, load of good S tier champions right now. Things like Zed, things like Katarina, a lot of Katarina one tricks in Diamond. I really, really like Twisted Fate. You've got the normal version, or you've got the on-hit version with like Rapid Fire Cannon, Wit's End, etc. Singed mid, not putting him any higher than A tier. I know a lot of people rate Singed mid. I'm putting Singed mid here because he is a specific counter pick in certain scenarios. Actually, interestingly, I have played Nautilus mid, and I think he's probably, I don't know, Nautilus mid could probably sit pretty easily in A tier in the right matchup, but I haven't really found a build that I super like about Nautilus, super like with Nautilus mid just yet. But overall, I think that Singed is a good counter pick in certain matchups, but not something you're going to want to pick every game. Pyke, again, similar. Like I think Pyke and Nautilus in outside of their support roles is very difficult to really say where they sit right now, but I think they're playable. So when I think something's playable and decent, I think I put it in A tier. I think Lux probably worth moving up. I've seen a little bit more Lux play than B tier, so I think Lux I'm going to move up for the sake of this tier list. Kayle is still in a really, really bad spot, by the way. Poor Kayle. She's been in a bad spot for quite a number of patches now. But Kayle is one of those champions that's impossible to balance. Like, either she's going to be shit like this, or she's going to be ridiculously overpowered because she scales too quickly and does too much damage. It's better that Kayle is in this box than Kayle being in this box. Because if Kayle's in this box, no one has fun. If Kayle's in this box, then maybe some good Kayle players will get some good games out of her, but ultimately she's not making everyone else's life a living hell. Which, I guess, thematically, in terms of her lore, probably makes sense. Dragon Lane. This I've heavily borrowed from I'm the Dooms tier list, who I'll also link in the description below. Kai'Sa, Caitlyn, and Xayah, he rates as the highest AD carries, and I would be inclined to say that's pretty accurate with Lethal Tempo still being so strong. I think Caitlyn, really, really, really good solo queue AD carry because she can be so dominant in her own right. If you look at wildstats.gg, it'll tell you that Jinx has got the highest win rate and highest pick rate out of pretty much like most champions in the game. Jinx is really good right now and has a lot of really good supports that she can pair up with. So I think she's like, but I think like ultimately she still is support dependent. So that's why I'm not putting her like 100% in S+ tier. I think these champions are not as support dependent. I still rate Vayne, I think, with a Draven buff that's made him really strong. Obviously, Lethal Tempo has introduced things like Tristana and Ashe. Lucian also making his way back up into S tier. Champions down below, like Jhin, Misfortune, Corki, the more sort of less traditional AD carries, the ones that didn't benefit from Lethal Tempo, not in a great spot. And in general, AP carries aren't so good in solo queue outside of competitive. So this is kind of where we're sitting with the AD carry tier list. And here we go, support. Right. Yuumi, insanely strong. Nami, really strong right now. Lulu, really good. Karma, really good. I actually really rate Rakan as one of the best engaged supports in the game. Actually, do you know what? I think I might move him down slightly. I actually think Nautilus is super strong. I know the win rate doesn't reflect it right now, but I did show you at the start of the video that his win rate's been going up the more and more people play him. I think this champion has got so much lockdown in his kit. Once people start to work out how to play him properly, he's going to be like Omega overpowered. So much engage, so much lockdown, so much lane presence. This champion, I think, is really strong. I really rate Pyke as well. I think Pyke is a bit more user dependent than Nautilus, which is why his win rate's not going up. But he is really strong in terms of his damage output, and I think just needs a bit more time for people to get used to. Other than that, Senna up in S tier. Alistar still a really good support engage. Interesting enough, you don't really see much Janna anymore, but she is still quite strong. Like, I think the reason you don't see Janna is just there are other enchanters that are better than her right now, but as an individual champion, I still rate her. Braum has fallen off the face of the planet, unfortunately, although with a rise of Pyke and Nautilus, we might just start to see a bit more Braum because he's a very good anti-melee support. Soraka is decent-ish, Sona's decent-ish, Morgana is probably better in jungle, but can still obviously be played in the support role. Win rates on wild stats would have you believe that Leona is really strong, but I think Leona does what Nautilus does, but Nautilus kind of does it a bit better. But I do think that Leona is good and maybe a little underrated right now. And of course, by the way, Seraphine absolutely sucks. Sorry to rattle through the end of the tier list. Got a massive headache and I need to go to bed. But hopefully that will give you some indication and we'll update it for the next patch. And thanks for watching, by the way, and I'll see you soon.